My name is Victor. I am the occult technician, and this is Mind War. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now, back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. Folks, today we're going to pick up where we left off in the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. And then in the second half of today's episode, we're going to continue on my magical journey by going through my Instagram. You can follow me on Instagram at The Occult Technician. But before we get there, we're going to pick up where we left off on page 27 of the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. This was supposedly one of Adolf Hitler's favorite books, one of his most read books from his library. It's, I think, in my opinion, of all the occult books that I've read, this is by far the most important. It teaches magic in its simplest forms, and it actually tells us how to do magic. What I found with so many other occult books in my library, all they focused on was symbolism, trying to explain the symbolism, what this monster means and what that monster means, and you know why it has three heads, one like a lion, one like a toad, you know why this god has snake legs and a chicken head. Cool. We're going to try to go through some of those things, and I'll explain to the very best of my ability what those things mean and how to practically practice them, how to become the symbol that represents these different things, right? That's the difference that we're doing here in the Mind War podcast as we go through magic. My goal is to share with you the techniques that I learned to actually practice magic. The reason that I'm doing this is nowhere else, almost nowhere else, did I find anyone who was practically telling you how to do magic. Like, here's the steps to actually do it. It was very few and far between. It was little breadcrumbs that different magicians would leave of this is what I actually do, right? But so many of them keep it very close to the vest. They don't want to share those things. That's why it's a cult. That's why it's hidden. That's why there are secret societies who carry these things on. And that's what we do here in the Mind War. As the occult technician, I am trying to use the same skills I had as an information technology specialist to share and train others in information technology. I'm trying to do the same thing with occultism for all of you. So let's go on. We left off, the author was talking about the importance of dance when it came to ceremonial and ritual magic, especially for primitive man. Dance was very important. So we go on here to say that Alfred Lehman, again, he was one of the reporters that was going out and spending time with these tribes and watching their magical practices and reporting back to the West, basically what these tribes people were doing. He says this: Alfred Lehman brings a report about these magic dances, wherein such a ceremony, which is commonly practiced by the Tunguses, is described. In the middle of the yurt or hut flickered a bright fire around which a circle of black sheepskins were laid, on which a shaman was loudly reciting incantations and going around with well-measured and tactful steps. His garb was a long gown made of fur, whereupon straps, amulets, chains, bells, and pieces of iron and copper were hanging from top to bottom. In his right hand he had a magic drum, formed like a tambourine, that was likewise decorated with bells, and in his left hand he had a bow. His look was dreadfully wild and terrifying. Ooh, I like the sound of that. The assembly sat quietly, but with the most expectant alertness. Gradually, the flame in the middle of the yurt went out. Only the coals still smoldered and spread a mystic twilight. The shaman threw himself to the ground, and after laying there for about 5 minutes, he started to moan woefully, a kind of hollow or suppressed screaming, which sounded like it came from different voices. After a while, the fire was again blown on, and it blazed away high into the room. The shaman leaped up, put his bow on the ground, and by holding it with his hand and placing his forehead on the upper end of it, he began at first slowly, then gradually faster, to run around the bow in a circle. Okay, so you can think when you were a little kid, maybe you took a stick and you put it in the ground and you put your forehead on the other end of it and you just spun around in circles till you were dizzy. That's what he's talking about. So really, again, think of this, imagine this in your mind. You're in a yurt, you're in one of these big teepees, right? These big huts made of earthen material. There's a fire in the middle of it, surrounded by sheepskin, black sheepskin rugs or furs all around it. And the shaman is there, and he's wearing fur that's kind of covering him. And the fur is covered with bells and amulets that as he's bouncing around are making noises. You can picture this. I'm sure you've seen videos of tribes people kind of reenacting these type of things. And you got to think about this. If you're a tribes person and you're living, basically outside, you got your loincloth on, you eat whatever you can catch or maybe scrounge, going through and picking berries and stuff like that. Seeing someone dressed like this would raise a lot of emotions in you. This is the character in your life. Now, today, in Western society, through media, we see characters all day long, dressed in the most elaborate costumes every day. So it kind of has taken away the magic from us, right? We've seen it so much that it almost is becoming normal. Everyone looks like they are from the Hunger Games now, right? Everyone looks like they're from the capital of the Hunger Games, where they all dress like weirdos, right? So maybe some of the magic is lost in that. But back then, seeing someone dressed up as these kind of monster figures must have just been mind-blowing, right? And so again, he's the medicine man, the tribal leader. He's going to be dancing around the fire. He's saying incantations, things that have meaning to him and the practices that him and his tribe are teaching. And now he's spinning around getting dizzy. So let's see where this goes here. It says, after a good while of spinning, he suddenly stood up still without any sign of dizziness, and with his hands began to describe figures in the air. Then, in a kind of excitement, he gripped the drum, which he stirred with a certain melody, after which he soon jumped around, sometimes faster, sometimes slower, while his whole body twitched here and there unbelievably fast in a peculiar manner. During all these operations, the shaman had, with a certain craving, smoked a few pipes of the most aggressive tobacco, and between each one of them drunk a gulp of brandy. Suddenly he fell on the ground and laid there frozen and lifeless. Two of the attendants lifted him up and placed him upright on his feet. He looked ghastly. The eyes stood wide and vacant out of his head, and his whole face was red all over. He seemed to be in complete unconsciousness, and except a slight shudder of his whole body, there was no movement at all for a few minutes. No sign of life was noticeable. Eventually, he seemed to wake up from the stiffness, With the right hand based on his bow, he quickly wielded the magic drum with his left hand and jingling it around his head, then put it down to signify that he is now totally excited and that one could now ask him questions. His answers to these questions were given without long reflection, but in such a way as if he himself did not know what was going on. Wow. Okay. The shaman here, the medicine man, he did his dance. He spun around and got dizzy. He was smoking the most aggressive tobacco, drinking brandy, doing these wild dances until he fell to the ground. And then his attendants had to pick him up. And now he's picked up. He's looking terrible. He looks like he's out of it. But he sets the drum on the ground, which signifies that he's ready to answer questions. The medicine man, the shaman, is now in the state of somnambulance. This is what we've talked about before. He is now in a different state of mind. He is now in a state of hypnosis. He is now in a state where his mind is able to channel. He's able to be a medium if that's what they're doing, if they're trying to speak to their ancestors, to look for answers. If he is simply trying to connect with the absolute, the cosmic dynamic forces, this is the state of mind that you have to be in as a magician in order to do this. You cannot just do this sober-minded. I don't believe it works that way. And so now he's in this state of somnambulance. He's in this hypnotic state. And now the people are asking questions. And again, he's able to channel those answers. They say right here, he was giving the answers to these complex questions without even thinking about them. The answers were just flowing from him, almost as if he himself did not know what was going on. We're going to talk more about channeling, mediumship, and possession in future episodes. In this case, we have to interpret the dance movement as an ecstatic and demonic moment, which in combination with narcotic means, nicotine and alcohol, provides a state of possession. Okay? And again, this produces a state of possession. And the word possession is in quotes here. And then afterwards, there are parentheses that say possession means trance or somnambulism. That's exactly what I'm talking about. In order to do magic, you have to get into a trance. You have to get into a hypnotic state. You have to get into a different state of mind, and it's called somnambulism. Okay? In which an extensive shifting of the ego happens so that apparently someone else, a ghost, speaks out of the pertaining body. Okay, this is beautiful. When you are in your state of somnambulism, when you are in a trance, your ego is set aside. Again, all the things that we think we want, we think that we think that we need to be and transform into, those are often lies told to us by our ego. Our ego is telling us we need to be richer, we need to be more famous, we need to have bigger muscles and, hotter partners and faster cars and all that stuff. That's our ego. The ego is set aside when you're in a trance. You don't care about it. It opens you up to the truth of what you really need. In the universe, the absolute, the cosmic dynamic force, God, whatever you want to call it, is going to provide you those answers. And again, they're saying that it happens as almost if someone else is speaking through the body. A ghost, it says. A ghost is speaking through you. Now, I do believe that you can do ceremonial and ritual magic in order to get into a trance state that would allow you to be a medium, possibly of other spirits, maybe people that have passed away. You kind of get to channel their life some of their experiences maybe get passed through you. I believe that might be a possibility. Maybe through your trance-like state, you are connecting to the Akashic records and you're downloading information that way, right? That could be a possibility. But also remember, when you're in this trance-like state and the ego is set aside, now you get the true answers from within you, what you really need, because you more than anyone else knows what you need in your life. And the answers are going to come from within. Again, we send the questions out as above, and the answers come from within, so below. Okay? Let's carry on here. It says, dancing is also a central part during a magic healing ceremony, which Alfred Lehman mentions from some Red Indian tribes. At the beginning, it is in the form of pantomimic ceremony, which gradually leads to ecstasy. It says this: the dance is literally a performance, which the medicine man performs at the sick bed before an awestruck audience. Sorry. Beating on a small drum or banging with a rattle, he moves in a circle and states that he is conversing in a mythical way with the ghosts, sucks the sickness out of the patient's stomach or neck, chases bad ghosts out of the various parts of the body, etc. Continuing in this way, he not only brings himself, but also his audience and patients into a state of ecstasy, wherein those same patients stare at him with fear and tremor. And when he shakes his magic rattle or beats his small tambourine, they imagine that heaven and earth are listening and that the whole universe bows before him. So, one of the things, when we go to a concert, we talked about this a little bit before, and especially if you're watching a very dynamic character on stage, right? And they are using all sorts of, their costume is bright and brilliant, and there's a lot of, pyrotechnics, fire is happening on the stage, things like that. You get drawn into it. A perfect example is when you go and watch a techno concert, right? And the beat just starts out slow and then it gradually gets higher and higher. Everyone is on some type of, drug, and the ecstasy just keeps getting higher and higher. And the crowd together, you feel all of that energy. That's magic, right? Now, those people who put on those concerts and stuff like that, they're doing that magic. They are siphoning the energy out of you for a lot of reasons, right? One of them is financial. Most of those people are becoming insanely wealthy off of their art form, which is beautiful. Have at it. And who knows what else they're doing with your energy. A lot of it we hear is evil type ceremonies, these ceremonies that they do right in front of us. I think some of that might be true. Some of that stuff you see on, the award shows and all that, it's some pretty creepy shit, right? But who knows, okay? But they are getting people into this state of ecstasy. And again, you got to think of that when you are, in the olden days, you're this primitive person, and you're watching this medicine man dance around in this amazing costume, and maybe you've had a little bit of the tobacco and the alcohol too, and they're beating on their drum, and it's creating a trance. It's going to raise that ecstasy level. And again, in this particular paragraph, they're talking about healing someone. And this, to me, again, the medicine man dancing around, grabbing the sickness out of the person, pulling it out, not physically cutting into them and tearing the tumor out. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about spiritual hands grabbing the spirit of sickness and pulling it out of the person. That may sound very primitive and a little too creepy and crazy. Like, what is that all about? It's imagination. That's all. They're using their imagination in order to heal the person. Where have we heard that? The Gateway Experience tapes. when we did our living body map, and we visualized us standing in front of the mirror and our body transforming into different colors, each color representing a different function or system in the body, right? Whether it was our nervous system, our skeletal system, our digestive or muscular systems, right? Each light described a different physical body system. We looked to see where the light was flickering or dull. And then we used our magic wand, right, to heal ourselves. And when we do that, healing options become available to us in the real world. I talked about it for me. The first time I listened to the Living Body Map tape, I had been working for 6 months trying to get new medication to heal myself, to deal with the symptoms of my chronic digestive disorder. In 3 days after listening to that tape, I got my first dose of my new medicine. After suffering from this chronic disease for over 20 years with very little help, just 3 days after healing myself in the abyss through this using my imagination, this visualization technique, the medicine arrived in my mailbox. That was an example of doing magic and it having worldly effects here in the real world. Now again, I started the process of getting that medicine 6 months prior. It took months of testing and paperwork and all sorts of things. Was it just a coincidence that I did this Gateway Experience tape, the Living Body Map, where I healed myself, visualized myself being healed, and 3 days later the medicine arrived? I don't know if that's coincidence or not. I don't think that there is such a thing as coincidence anymore, especially when we come to that 3-day time frame. We are going to see the 3-day time frame in my magical story over and over and over again. I do some type of magical ceremony and 3 days later the results occur. It's amazing. But the reason I wanted to go into that so much is we may look at it as primitive today, what the medicine man was doing, but it's still very important. It's okay to visualize these things. It's okay to even embellish that visualization as seeing the sickness as some type of monster, as some type of evil spirit, and pulling it out, casting it out of them, doing it in a way, what do the religious people do? Exorcism, right? Like an exorcism type thing. You can do this. What it is it's a spiritual operation. So before you cut yourself, or before the doctor cuts you open and does it physically, maybe you spiritually do it through your imagination. It's no different than the professional basketball player, and you hear it. The professional basketball player and the professional golfers say this all the time. Not only do they shoot 6,000 baskets per day, but after they shoot 6,000 baskets in real life with their real physical body, then they go home and they close their eyes and they visualize shooting 6,000 baskets. Same thing. They hit 6,000 golf balls, and then at the end of the day, they visualize themselves hitting 6,000 golf balls in their imagination. I saw a guy just the other day on the side of a cliff about to do this giant dive. He was some Red Bull diver, right? A professional diver. And he was visualizing it. I saw a guy getting ready to, do an MMA fight or something. He was visualizing himself going through the motions, what techniques and attacks and defenses he was going to use. That's all this is. And when you're sick, and when you're in pain, it's okay to look for answers and things like this because it gives you hope. It's okay to do these type of things for hope. It might not work. The medicine might not come. If the medicine does come, it may not solve your problem. but it's still okay to do these things. Again, it's part of the emotional release of your sickness sometimes. And it's sometimes just helps you deal with it, you know. So it's important. Do these things. Use your imagination to heal yourself and to heal others, along with the practical things that you have to do in the real world, right? You can't just imagine yourself healed and not call the doctor. You got to do both. It helps, right? The doctor might still be able to heal you without you going through the imagination part, but the imagination and the ceremony and the things that we're talking about here, that helps spiritually. It helps emotionally. It makes you feel like you have some control over your own physical life, right? All right, let's go on here, folks. So it says J.W. Hauer, I think he's another author. It says J.W. Hauer writes about dance as a means to the ecstatic. And it goes on to quote his writings here. It says, that the dance is primarily a means of amusement is a false delusion, as the comparing ethnography shows. For the Red Indians of Tarahumara, for example, the only big sin is to not dance enough. And according to Prush, another author, dancing is a very serious matter, comparable to a kind of prayer or magic rather than an amusement. So again, a lot of dancing today is done for amusement, entertainment. Go out and have fun and do your dancing. Back then, dance was much more serious, a form of prayer or magic. It says here, Indra, the god of battles and weather, surely did not dance for amusement. Likewise with Marut. Indra's dances must have a deeper meaning. They are strength-stirring and life-creating. But the strength-affecting dance is at the same time also an ecstatic dance. In Indra's case, the dance is comparable with manifestations of strength. This will suffice to show that Indra's dances are indeed wild and ecstatic ones. And that's going to be interesting for your magical journey. Whatever path you take, wherever the information leads you to find the knowledge, right? Maybe you do find some ancient tribal teachings and maybe some ancient gods that you feel connected to, and you say, okay, I want to learn more about what those tribes did and I want to recreate it in my own way. You can do that, right? And this idea of a dance that's particular focus is to gain strength. Again, if that's what your magical practice is for, if you are saying, I need to physically be stronger, I need to mentally be stronger or emotionally be stronger, that's what your ritual and your ceremony are going to represent. And if dance is a part of that, cool. Use the dance. Again, you think about it, the dance that we're talking about is going to physically make you stronger. They're talking about basically these guys were dancing for hours. They were fasting. They were sweating in their kind of sweat lodges, right? These are all things that are going to build your physical strength. And so you can play that up in, again, whatever your ritual or ceremony is. Again, with things, they were talking about wanting rain. If you are out doing a rain dance, you're going to use accoutrement and costumes that represent rain. We see that with the sticks that have all the little pebbles in them. And as you flip them back and forth, it sounds like rain falling. You're going to use those type of tools in your ceremony, right? Again, are you going to make it rain? Who knows? Try it. Tell me how it works. All right, let's go on here. It says, we are always inclined to dismiss everything that is associated with ecstasy, somnambulism, etc., as belonging to an area of empty imagination, as lacking scientific insight, or even as sickly. Okay, that's interesting. Even in Dr. Schertl's days, in the late 1800s, early 1900s. He is saying that even society and culture back then, which the monotheistic religions had well taken hold and are even back then in control of society in so many ways like they are today. And I would say that today's culture would say the same thing, that anything, whether it's ecstasy, somnambulism, these are going to be dismissed and associated with what as having lacking scientific insight, fine. As being sickly, okay. I think the opposite, like we just talked about, you can build strength through these ways, through these practices. And also it says that we are taught that these type of things are just empty imagination. That's just what I got done talking about. They don't want you to think that your imagination is important. In fact, again, my friend Deog, aka Joey, who is a member of the Judeo-Christian cult called the 12 Tribes. They're the guys who run the yellow delis, right? They teach their children not to have imagination. And in fact, from what I understand, they punish them when they use their imagination because they are in a structured cult, like we've talked about before, whatever organization, corporation, or institution, it doesn't matter. When you go into it, everything, when you get into some type of cult, it already has a structure of belief, and you cannot step outside of it. Again, organization, corporation, institution, doesn't matter. Do not test their core set of beliefs. You will be thrown out. And that's, again, what these cults do. If you try to even imagine anything that is outside of their narrow field of teaching, you're going to be in big trouble. And it's so sad to think that they teach their children not to use their imagination. It's insane. So we're going to go on here, and this next sentence is one of the sections that may have been highlighted by Adolf Hitler in his copy of the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl, and it says this. It says, these believe to settle the affair with this classification, but we don't take into consideration that our norms of reality and imagination, of true and untrue, of healthy and sick, are indeed relative, and that there can be conditions of the soul where these concepts literally turn around, and where we cannot simply reject these conditions of the soul as unjustified. Again, the author, in a very simple way, is saying that the societal, cultural, and religious wet blankets that have been forced upon us, we can turn those things around. We can take the wet blankets off, and we can turn around our belief system. We can turn the way that we've been thinking. In fact, if it means a complete 180 turn around, where we turn our backs on the things that held us down, we can do that. We turn our backs on them and walk away just long enough to build up enough strength and determination to turn around and destroy those things. Things like our norms of reality and imagination. Again, they do not want us using our imagination, folks. They don't want us using it for anything. Not only to better ourselves, but if we're trying to research things, remember, you can't think or research information that isn't given to you by the authority figure of that information. How dare you? No, we've already determined the answer to that question, and here it is. And any variation or deviance from it is a lie. I don't know if that's how it works. The beautiful thing about questions is once the question has been put out there, the answer may be found over and over and over again, and the answer may evolve over time. But these things like truth and untrue, what it means to be healthy and sick. Wow, isn't that a big one right now, right? Truth and untruth. For the last, most people who are waking up to it today, they say for the last 5 years, we've been lied to, and everything that we said was happening, we were told we were lying, we were told it was mis and disinformation, we were kicked off of social media, and what we find is 5 years later, well, we, the conspiracy theorists, were actually correct about just about everything, right? And not only were we correct, but now the authorities, the governments, the organizations, corporations, and institutions are actually coming out and telling us we were correct. There is some vindication there. It's too late, but at least there's some vindication. So that's the truth turning, or the untruths turning to truths, right? There was a 180 change there, okay? The origins of certain diseases, the the integrity of certain political events or things like that, right? All of those things that we were told were lies 5 years ago we're now finding the truth. There was a 180 change. Again, with healthy and sick. We look at the food pyramid today and it's filled with poison. And now we are doing a 180. Hopefully we have people in the current administration who are really true to this idea of making America healthy again. And we're moving away from that food pyramid that was filled with poisons and sugars and fats and, all sorts of things that were making us sick. And it's going to move us back towards eating healthier foods, right? This is what the author's talking about, is that there is times in history, I believe we're going through one right now, where even our ideas of truth and untruth, health and sickness, they're going to have 180 changes, right? And that's a good thing. We need to do that more often. If you live a life where you say, I'm doing this thing in my life, this daily routine that I do, because this is how we've always done it, you need to question this is how we've always done it. If you have something in your life and you say, I do this every day because this is how we've always done it, this is how I was taught to do it, you need to question it. Look at it from all angles and say, is this what I should be doing? Just because we've always done it this way doesn't mean that we have to continue doing it that way. I've found that if you push on those things just a little bit, if you push against this is how we've always done it scenario, you'll find that they crumble and new, better solutions come from it. Almost every time. Just as there is not only one but infinite geometries, which are completely coherent and reasonable, so are there infinite possibilities of a worldview and a resulting attitude which, despite contradicting each other, exist in themselves with complete justification and could never, in the sense of a line of argument, be pitted against each other. Let's go on here. It says, we already indicated that the type of magic man does definitely not signify something ill in the common sense, despite displaying a lot of symptoms which we call pathological in our world sphere. In his sphere, the magician operates indeed as healthy and shows the essential attributes of the healthy. That is to say, courage, self-confidence, and the ability to cope with life. Likewise, there appears what we call imagination, completely as reality in their associated world, and our realities appear there simply as obtuse imbecilities quite frequently. This book is awesome. I mean, that was so poetic. So let's go back and read for a minute. So again, the magic man, the magician, that's what we are. That's what we'll become. We're not ill. We're not signifying anything ill, right? We are healthy in our own way, right? We have things like courage and self-confidence and the ability to cope with life. So courage. It takes courage every day for me to come down here into the Mind War studios and say the things that I'm saying into this microphone. Because again, they go against our current norms. We've already been told magicians, when they come out and try to speak the truth, are going to be demonized. We are going to be looked at as evil, and the hordes of the profane, the mob of the profane will stand against us. Okay? So it takes courage. It takes self-confidence, which we have because we're able to, through our magical practice, understand the truth of the magic and see it work in our own lives. That's where we get the self-confidence, because we know what we're doing is real. I know it's real in my life, and as you practice it, you're going to recognize when it becomes real in your life. And then that gives us the ability to cope with life. So many people are out there. I mean, the water's right here, folks. I mean, they are about to drown. They are not coping with life. The waves are splashing over them every day. They are barely surviving. And these might be some of the most successful people that you know. They might look good on the outside. Everything's perfect. But man, they are one hiccup away from their life falling apart. Whereas what we do, we build solid foundations through our magical practices that help us and give us the ability to cope with life. And we look at things differently. And that's what's so important. Again, what appears in our imagination, that is our reality. And we start to see things differently. And what happens is the reality for the profane, what is norm for the general audience, simply becomes obtuse imbecilities, right? It truly is. I don't want to get into it too much, but again, looking back on 2020, looking back at the disease that occurred, and we are just now, over the last few months in 2025, getting reports from the United States government at the origins of the disease that came at us in 2020, that caused the pandemic, right? And we were told back then that it was caused by someone eating a soup that had a bat in it from something called a wet market over in this town in China. And you go, wait, what? They're eating bat soup in China? What are you fucking talking about? That is insane. That doesn't make any sense. And in that very exact same town, right next to where this wet market is, there is a building called, the name of the town, I'm not even going to say it, that studies through virology the name of the disease that hit us in 2020. And you go, where did the disease come from? The laboratory that, experiments with these types of diseases, or a wet market where a guy supposedly ate bat soup? That's what we're talking about. They give us such absurd and imbecile and obtuse options. One, completely a lie. So ridiculous. But so many people believed it. And the other one, so clearly plain as day, saying this is the answer. That's where that disease came from. It was created in that laboratory. It was maybe leaked on purpose. Who freaking knows? But that's what we're talking about. 5 years ago, we were said that we were crazy for saying these type of things. We were kicked off social media. People were fired from their jobs. All sorts of insane things were happening. All sorts of demonization for people who were trying to just simply bring the truth to a very tragic event that was occurring. And we got chastised for it. And now 5 years later, the 180 has happened, just like we're talking about here. And it's going to happen over and over and over again in your life, especially the more powerful you become in your magic, because you're going to start to see the lies around you. They're going to start to crumble. They're going to start to fade away. It's not going to be real anymore. And so I think that's where we're going to leave off for today. There's a real big paragraph coming up. So we're just finishing up. That was almost all the way through page 30 from the book Magic, History, Theory, Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. And when we return, we're going to continue on my magical journey over on my Instagram page at The Occult Technician, and we'll do that in just a moment. All right, welcome back, folks. So again, we're going to pick up on my magical journey over on Instagram at The Occult Technician. You're going to scroll all the way to the bottom. And we're going to be taking a look at two posts today. The first one is, I believe, my fourth post. It's titled Snow Moon. You can see it there. This one, it's titled June 20th, 2022. A lot of my early posts were made on a separate Instagram account that has since closed down. When I created The Occult Technician, it took me a few months to actually come up with that moniker and create the character and everything. So this post was actually from early 2022, the Snow Moon. And what we're going to see here, again, you have the pentagram mat that I purchased off of Amazon with the tarot cards that I got from Amazon. Again, in those early days, take what you have, right? Get what you need wherever you need it. There's no shame. There's no competition there. Grab the tools where you can, because that's when you're going to start learning, right? Again, it's like you're learning any type of skill. You may have to start with the smaller tools before you move to the bigger ones, right? So in this picture, again, the snow moon, this is where I was really starting to say, again, I'm going to be doing my magical practices on the full moon. I always figured, hey, throughout, culture and everything, they tell us the importance of the full moon. Sometimes you can just feel the excitement on the night of the full moon. So I thought that was a perfect time to do it. And in this one, you see that I moved away from the kitchen table, and I actually started working on this little cabinet. So the small wooden cabinet that is going to be displayed throughout much of my art here on Instagram, this was made by my grandfather, where I take my name Victor. So my grandfather, my dad's dad, his name was Victor Thorvald. Okay? His middle name was Thorvald. That's so amazing. Literally, his middle name is Thor. Okay, and we're going to go more into what I believe are my ancestral roots into Vikings, right? Actual Swedish and, Scandinavian Viking folk believe that's where I came from. And I think I have enough ancestry type information to prove that, and it's pretty amazing, and I can't wait to share that more. But the reason I bring that up is because now what we're seeing is it's not just Amazon stuff that I'm buying. Now I'm starting to incorporate things into my magical practices that have meaning to me. So of course, a cabinet that my grandfather made has a lot of meaning to me. He was the first one who really introduced woodworking into my life when I was just a little boy. We went down into his wood shop, and he made me, swords and a little wooden gun and a little wooden guitar. He made me all these little wooden toys, right? And that little wooden sword, I fought every monster, every ogre, slayed every dragon with it for years, right? And those things meant so much to me, and it really cemented woodworking in my life. And that's what you see with the symbols in front of me and behind me. I use that woodworking still today in my art. But there's another piece in this picture that means so much to me. And if you look in the corner there, you see a little small black skull. And it's a little dish, right? And so that little black skull dish I made in middle school, right? So one of our art classes, we were able to make some clay, a clay pot, right? And then fire it and paint it and glaze it and all that type of stuff. It was a very fun class. I hope that kids still get to do that type of stuff today. I fear that they don't. But that little skull dish, again, very personal to me. That was from when I was a child. And when I moved back here to Michigan and was kind of going through all the things of mine that were in my parents' attic, this is one of the things that I found. And I'm telling you, when I first found that, I was holding it in my hands, right? And the way that I made the eyes on that little skull dish when I was just a middle school kid is I pushed my thumbs into the clay and made the eyes, all right? So now, 30 years later, as an adult, I'm holding this dish in my hands. And I put my thumbs into the eyes just like I did when I was a kid, and I felt this connection back to my younger self that just made me tear up as soon as I did it. This connection and appreciation for my childhood just swelled up in front of me. It swelled up in me. All these ideas and memories of all the good things that happened when I was younger. And that was beautiful. That was part of what this journey means, right? And for me, maybe as an older man, I'm going to have different emotional events like this occur through my magic. If you're a younger person, maybe you don't get these type of things, but instead of reviewing the past, you're going to be, again, thinking more about the future. But the reason that this post, again, is important because I wanted to share with you the idea of starting to add more personal things into it. Again, not the coolest stuff in the world, right? That's not the coolest altar table I could have found. I could have made one and painted it black and put skulls and fire and all kinds of stuff on it, whatever, right? But instead, I used a humble side table, this little cabinet that my grandfather built, and it had a ton of meaning to me. I added this little clay skull to the picture because it had meaning to me. It was bringing back emotions when I pulled these cards. And again, I don't remember that I really asked any questions in particular with these cards, but this, I'm looking at the notes I wrote on the post here. This was from February 16th of 2022. The cards that I pulled were the Daughter of Swords, the Seven of Pentacles, and the Daughter of Pentacles, okay? And I'm sure at the time, I just was reading through those things and saying, okay, how are these applying to my current life? How do these reflect my life? And that's what I found that the tarot cards do, and we'll get into that more. I find that they're really more of a reflection of what is going on in our life at the moment versus trying to predict something or prophesy something that may be happening. Okay, so that was the first post that we're going to go over today. I want to go over the next one too. And this one was, let's see. It doesn't really have a title, but this post you'll see again the same pentagram mat. I have what looks kind of to be a crystal ball in the middle of it that has the world map etched onto it. I pulled 3 cards that day, and you see around the pentagram, I have all of my pieces of silver. I have these 1 ounce American flag silver bullion. I have it placed around the sides. You have the black ceramic skull that I just talked about. And in the other corner, we have an Egyptian pharaoh statue that my friend from the last episode, she purchased that for me at an antique store. That's one of the few items that she gave me that I added to my magical collection, right? And then I have a couple of little ceramic balls that you add water to, and then they disperse the water throughout the atmosphere to kind of just keep things not so dry in your house, right, as it evaporates. So basically this pull that I did here, this was at the start of the Ukrainian and Russian war. I don't know why I cared about this. I think it was mostly people in my life were really worried at the time for some reason, and they kept asking me about it, and I thought, okay, let's see if magic and pulling tarot cards can provide some answers for this type of scenario, right? I quickly realized after this pull that I'm never doing magic about this type of topic again. I don't believe magic is really for the outside world and world events and stuff. Leave that for the organizations, corporations, and institutions that do black magic on their own, right? Let them do their thing. Magic for us is about self-help. Magic for us is about our personal journey. That's what I believe, and that's what I'm trying to share with you here. Again, if you want to find a coven, if you want to join your First Earth Battalion, where you and like-minded individuals use magic to affect larger events and things like that, go ahead. But for me, after this post, it really was all personal and more internally focused. But this one was, again, dealing with the events of the war, and basically all that I took away from it is that the people who want this war to happen are in charge, and they're going to make it happen. They're going to say when it happens and when it stops and what happens during the war, and there's really nothing any of us can do about it, so there's no reason to worry. That's what I took away from this poll, right? And again, I wanted to share this one today, again, as that idea. When you're doing magic, for me, I think it's more about self-help. Right? Focus internally. Focus on yourself when you're doing the magic. Maybe again, work with those who you love, that are close to you. If they're willing to do the magic with you, you can work together on your life, making your own personal lives better. Because I believe, again, instead of having a handful of magicians out there playing crucial roles in the biggest events of history and changing the world that way, I would rather see millions or billions of magicians who, like the book Magic History Theory Practice teaches us, is that ancient humans used magic every day. It was just a regular art form for them. It was a regular way of life for them. And when we talk about these dark arts, these magical arts, it can be compared to things like cooking and gardening and exercise and whatever your professional craft is. We are all artists at that. We are all magicians in our own crafts, right? And it can be as simple as some of our daily things that magic can have an effect on. So again, that was a fun post. Artistically, I like the way that it looked. I like how the globe almost looks like it's floating off the mat there. And it, again, these were the very early days. And like I said, I really moved away from doing polls that were outside of my personal realm, right? So another interesting episode today. We continued to do our work in the book Magic History Theory Practice by Dr. Ernst Schertl. We made it through a few pages. We made it through the next couple of posts on my Instagram over at The Occult Technician. And as always, folks, I appreciate you being here. And remember, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.